Namaste and good afternoon. I welcome you all to a new session of Bhava Samvad brought to you by Kalinga Literary Festival. Today we'll be discussing a newly released book, Quoting Hindustan, the consuming passion of iconic women performers of India. The book is a deeply researched collection of elegantly crafted portraits of intriguing women figures of traditional Indian entertainment art forms. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome our guest for the session, Sri Madhur Gupta ji, Odissi dancer and author, and Sri Kedar Mishra ji, a renowned writer, editor, and critic. To tell you a bit about Madhurji, he is one of the leading Odissi dance maestro of his generation. Beginning his journey with Kathak, he followed his inner calling towards Odissi and went through the advanced training in the Padma Bhushan Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra style of Odissi. He is currently teaching Odissi at Sangeet Vidya Niketan in New Delhi. Without further ado, I would request Kedarji to please take first session the forward.
Yeah, thank you, Soumya. And I welcome Madhur, a very young performer and author. So it's always a very welcome transition to see dancers becoming author. So I have seen in my career as a dance writer, a script writer, and also a dance critic. I have seen thousands of dancers, but very few authors among the dancers. So, welcome to that very cozy and small, exclusive club of dancers and writers. And uh, when we are now going to talk about Madhur's book, Quoting Hindustan, the consuming passions of iconic women performers of India. A brilliantly written book. That would be the first line. Uh, you know, Madhuri is talking about women performers across the ages, starting from Amrapali to Bala Saraswati. And dancers or performers, dancers, singers who have come from a very troubled and checkered background. The tradition of courtesans, the tradition of kotha, tradition of maharis, devdasis, then tabayaf, nautch girls. So this is a very complicated area where we can generally we can divide the performers in two categories. One category is of dancers or performers, dancers, musicians who are performing for god or goddesses, and the other side is uh, performers who are presenting their art for novelties, uh, for reach, for royals, for um, common man. So, but there is also a line where these two streams merge. Like the Devdasis of Odisha, they first performed for common people 500 years back when Raya Ramananda brought four Devdasis to present a drama called Jagannatha Vallabha. So there is also a tradition of Devdasi performing for the gods, and at the same time they are performing for the devotees and the common people. But that is not the same with the Kotesans, the Tabayats, the Kotewalis, the Ganika or the Nagarbadhu. So in this book, there are Nagarabadhus like Amrapali and Basansena. Then we have great names like Jaddanbai, uh,
Begum
Janki
Akhtar,
Bai, Begum
Janki,
Hazrat Mahal, then Begum
Begum Akhtar.
Samru, Rani Rupmati, and what's interesting is Gohar Jan, the
God.
great Gohar Jan, and of course the darling of many of us, Begum Akhtar. So let me ask the first question to Madhur. Madhur, how it was, how the journey started, for being a performer to an author? How do you think that you are going to write a book? You are
Uh,
learning with Vicky, you are learning with
Sharon ji.
Taronji, you are learning with Madhviji, and being a performer, and completely merged into practicing, learning, and performing. How you decided to become an author and to write a book on women performers, the legendary women performers of India.
Well, first of all, namaste to everybody. I'm very thankful to KLF to have to present Quoting Hindustan, a session on Quoting Hindustan, and to have me, like Kedarji said, such a young person who is a dancer and now a writer on your esteemed platform. And like I was telling Sir just before the session started, this one feels like an examination because Kedar sir is just so senior and I'm totally in awe of him. So I'm a little nervous right now. But to answer your question, sir, so the book actually, I call myself a default writer. I mean, I'm not a great writer per se like you, but just for the fact that my education was such that I have a grasp, a little bit more command over the English language more than some of my colleagues, and I can form sentences and construct thoughts and translate them. So I used to write a few articles here and there for this newspaper, that magazine, some for a few years now. And Rupa Publications, my publishers, the one of the commissioning editors, Shashwati, she must have read one of my pieces on courtesans, and she called me up. And so the Rupa Publications, they said they commissioned the book. They said, "You're a performer. You're already writing. We like your writing. Would you like to author a book on this?" So at that time, the task of writing 60, 70,000 words was magnanimous, huge. Like you were a writer, you'd understand. More difficult was the fact that this was non-fiction. So I could not imagine something and just like write. I had to do tons and tons of research and facts. And so we had to read a lot of research paper, a lot of books, a lot of archives, a lot of material which existed, and then take out the extracts from the thousands and thousands scrolls which exist, and then create this book for everyone. So the task although was daunting, but again, like Sharonji says, my Guruji, that it is not that I am a great teacher or a great performer or a great writer that I should do things, but it is my responsibility as a disciple of hers, and then she being Guru Kelucharan Mohopatraji's disciple, that the legacy should continue, and we have to reach out to Janmanas, to the mass, to explain how beautiful our arts are. And so that is how the book happened.
And then coming to the introduction, a foreword by the great Pandit Birju Maharaj ji.
Ji.
And it's you're lucky to have few words from Maharaj ji. And I found a very interesting reference of Maharaj ji talking about Jaddan Bhai and a few other performers. So
Yeah.
how was it? Did you discuss with Maharaj ji about all those performers, and how you actually brought Maharaj ji to write a forward?
Well, again, I am so honored and so humbled that all these maestros, not just Maharaj ji, everybody, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, Ustad Zakir Hussain Saab, Anushka Shankar, Malika Sarabhai, Maestro Zubin Mehta, everybody, when I told them, and this was 2, 3 years ago when the book was only half complete. I told them this is what I'm writing, and can I have some words of blessings from you? And they like went all out. And Maharaj ji said, क्यों नहीं? और एक दिन हम ऐसे ही बैठे थे, उन्होंने बोला अच्छा रिकॉर्ड कर लो, इसको तुम लिख लेना. So I just recorded what he had to say, and I said, Maharaj ji, I'll use it as a foreword. He said, बिल्कुल. And Maharaj ji's foreword is very crucial. I mean, we could have a foreword by anybody, but A, because Maharaj ji came from a lineage of traditional performers, and the family was directly teaching some of the courtesans, including Hazrat Mahal and Jaddan Bai, was
Jaddan
what
Bhai,
made the forward really enriching, because he spoke from personal experience. His family, his father Achan Maharaj ji, his mother actually saw these people in real people, like as real people. So they knew the personalities, they knew the characteristics, they knew the hardships that one had to struggle through to then make a name for themselves as a woman entertainer in a time when women could not even step out of the parda. So to get Maharaji's forward was a blessing.
Okay, now coming to the book.
Yes.
You in the beginning I told about two kind of performers, particularly in this group of performers.
Ji.
A group of performers who were performing uh, for the gods, actually, like Bala Saraswati, or Amrapali was a Nagar Badhu, but there is a transformation when she is going towards Nirvana, meeting Buddha and transforming completely. And we remember the very famous quotation from Bhagavad Puran, that is Pingala. That
Yes,
is
yes.
one category of performers who go beyond the performance and touch the height of enlightenment and become liberated,
Correct.
literally liberated. And the other group of performers, they are charmers. They are the enchantresses, like Jadanbai or Goharjan or Begum Akhtar. They are very
Ji.
mundane. So,
Ji.
how do you see contradictions between these two group of performers? One group of performers who are uh, for whom a performance is a path to reach the uh, height of
Sublime.
liberation, and the
Correct.
other group, they are performing for common people and living the life of a common man, suffering, struggling, and dying. So,
Correct.
how do you see these two? Is it a
So,
contrast,
sir,
or is there a common meeting point between these two groups?
yeah. So again, I from because I'm a performer myself, I can speak from my personal experience only, and that is that when one has the vidya, has the treasure of art, which has been given to by a guru or by some ustad, and now we have it. Now I often think, where can I take my art? So can will I keep my art to the level of entertainment? I will go on stage and onlookers will just do the rasa swadan and they will feel enlightened and I will also feel wow, what achievement I have done. Or will I see even inwards and take art as a medium of enriching moksha, reaching moksha. So that as a performer, I have to decide which all these 10 women in their lifetime, in the circumstances that they were in, they had to decide. Some of them were able to use their art to arrive at divinity. Some of them stayed at the level of, like you're saying, mundane. Not everybody reaches metaphysical in one lifetime. So I think both these contrasting phases existed, but both of them for me have their value addition. So somebody who's reaching moksha, that's an entirely different journey that they are on. But somebody who's treating that art to entertain onlookers is also taking them on a journey for a very small time of leaving their sukh dukh outside the theater, coming, going into the world of what can be. So as an artist, they had the job of enlightening the common public or the nobility or whoever came to their place. So tawayas, for example, you have spoken a bit about. Tawayas were actually so the princes, the nobles, the nawabs, the young nawabs, they were sent to the tawayas kotha to understand the तहजीब and तमीज़ कि आप बातचीत कैसे करेंगे, पोएट्री कैसे करेंगे, संगीत का रसास्वादन कैसे करेंगे, to become connoisseurs. So their entire function was to make the society a more gentler, more sophisticated. They added that sophistication in the society. Their entire function was that. Their entire function was not that divinity should be arrived at. Whereas if we speak about Maharis or Devadasis or dances which are dedicated to temples, their entire function, which I'm telling all the audiences, their entire function was actually one of the sevas which are mentioned in the temple scriptures. बहुत प्रकार की सेवाएं होती हैं, उनमें से एक नृत्य सेवा भी होती है. तो भगवान को उठाते थे, वो नहलाते थे, खिलाते थे, सुलाते थे. These women were married to the god. Their entire life was about divine. So both these existed. Both of them took art as a medium of arriving at something. But I find value addition in both of them, whether it was for the public or for the divine.
Okay, but of course there is a value addition, but now coming to another phase, actually, when we are talking about the idea of Nagarvadhu, the idea of Nagarvadhu is a very strongly political one.
Yeah.
You are not the most talented and the most beautiful woman of the Nagara or of the Janapada is
Correct.
being liberated from marital bonding, and she is dedicated a siege or siege forced, or she opted out to take the life of a quotation. She is the
Correct.
property, she is the common property of the
Correct.
Janapada. So,
Correct.
in that case, how do you see the politics of Nagaravadhu transforming into a gender politics of the Magdanuga? Do you see
So
anything of?
yeah.
Yeah, please go.
Well, talking about gender politics, I think if somebody is forced to do anything at any point of time, and this is not even about gender, this is about just generality, then it is not correct. But like I've mentioned in the book, this was a coveted position. Women used to compete for this position because not only did they get an entire household to them, not only could they charge 50 sharpanas per night, but they can also choose their partners. So it was not like that they were thrust upon ki now you have to entertain all the nobility, whoever comes to your door. They had the choice of permitting whoever can come in or not. They had to choice of only having one patron for their entire life. They had the choice to not have strangers come into the house for any searches or anything. So although the position was thrusted upon or was chosen by these women, but once the position was held by one of the Nagar Vadhus, then they lived a life of luxury, of pleasure, of bhog vilas. And other thing is, I personally believe the sensibility of moralities that exists now in today's India is a very recent addition to how the thought processes have changed over the years. Because if we see Konark or Khajuraho or any Sun Temple or any older temples of the classical era, all sculptures talk about life. You know, it's all about life generation. It's all about love, and it's all about beauty. So I think India back then, sex was treated as a very liberal subject. It wasn't supposed to be hidden. It wasn't supposed to be shamed upon. And so, if even today, if I feel that I would not like to marry, or I would like to have a lover, I mean, I don't find anything wrong in that until, of course, like I said, if it is thrust upon somebody, if somebody is forced to do it, then in my eyes, it is something wrong. But if somebody is choosing that life for themselves, then go for it. I mean, that's my entire thing. And in case of Amrapali, it is sad that her lover, one of the lovers, was killed, Pushpa Kumar, and then she was thrust upon this responsibility. But then she was also very strong as a woman because she was at loggerheads with the Lichvi clan, and then she also was in love with Bimbisar. So she was actually influencing the geopolitics, not just the gender politics, but the geopolitics of her era and time. Imagine how powerful a woman she was.
In a way, they were the diplomat of their time. Actually, they were the
Correct.
kind of
Absolutely.
they were negotiating with kings and
Correct.
the rulers
Correct.
and the generals of that time. So
They had
they
fear
had that
of.
position actually.
Correct.
So
Absolutely.
I'm going to another. I have a very tricky question for you. You have chosen 10 characters.
Ji.
Amrapali,
Basant.
Roopmati, Begum Samru, Begum Hazrat Mahal, Gauhar Jan, Janki Bai, Jaddan Bai, Begum Akhtar, and Bala Saraswati. And I left one name, that is Basant Sena.
Basant. Yeah.
But all these 10 characters, they among these 10 characters, nine existed. They were in
Yeah.
flesh and blood. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Basanta Sena is the creation of a playwright. She
Correct.
is, he might be a real character, but
Correct.
is the heroine of Vrichakatikam,
Correct.
right? So,
Correct.
how you take one character who was not existed in flesh and blood. And why Basant Sena actually? Why not
Why?
others? Like there
Uh,
are many other courtesans or Nagarabadhu
yeah.
portrayed in Sanskrit epics or even Prakrit.
Correct, correct. No, I really appreciate this question, and my editor was also asking me the same question back when I started writing, and I suggested let's do Vasant Sena because a the book is so my book is not just a character sketch of these individual women. It is not da 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 da. They did this, and over. So it's not a historical book per se in that sense. Even in my introduction, I have said that the stories that I heard, the stories that I read, the facts that I read, it's all a mixture. It's mystery, myth, fact, everything. So when one reads Mrichakatikam, and if one reads the research papers on Mrichakatikam, one will understand that Shudraka, like other playwrights of their time, whether it was Kalidas or even Shakespeare, when he wrote plays, he took inspiration from real characters. Real characters were demonstrated on stage because these playwrights were patronized by the kings and the queens of their times. So they chose a character and then fictionalized them, chose a real person, fictionalized them, and then used to write. This was a common practice by most playwrights of those times. So, and also, again, in several research papers, which I've quoted in the book, if you read, it is said that Vasant Sena, it's a high possibility that would have existed. So, that factor of myth and fact was anyway over for me because I am like, if there's a 50% chance that this character exists, let's write about her because my book is making a statement that women entertainers or women in general, no matter how much plight or how much turmoil or how much struggles they are faced with, they have such strength from within, especially as artists. No matter what happens to them, that they will keep their art intact, they will keep their integrity intact, and they would arrive. Sorry, I think there's some disturbance.
Go on.
Yeah.
If,
No, so I was just saying, so Vasant Sena, I chose because she's such a strong character. Because like just we were discussing, na, ki Amrapali was, yes, the Nagarbadhu, but she could choose the husband or she could choose the patron, she could choose the lover. Likewise, Vasant Sena, she was pursued by Sthanaka, who was the evil I think brother-in-law, yeah, of the king. She said, no, I do not want to be with you, and so there's this entire story of how she chooses her lover and how strong she is as a woman. So I said this story must go in paper and should be read. And discussions like this should happen.
yeah, that's the point actually. All these 10 characters, all these great performers, they're very strong characters. But at the same
Correct.
time, they are struggling with their time, with their society, and
Correct.
they are establishing their own uh, existence. They are
Correct.
not. It's not that they are in a given circumstances they are just uh, getting. They are not queens actually. They are the queens. They are queens in the hearts of people, and
Yeah.
you can say that they are the product of a democratic choice. You
Correct.
know, you cannot be a Jadanbai if you are not liked by the people of that time. If you not okay, Steve,
Absolutely.
if you are appreciated by the kings or the novelties, but at the same time, the songs of these great performers went
Yeah.
into the heart of common man, common people. And
Correct.
Begum Akhtar
Correct.
is the height of that, and
Absolutely.
Begum Akhtar was the queen of everyone's heart for a longer time.
Correct. Correct.
So, in that case, let's come to another side. When you are talking about Janki Bai, I was
Ji.
really very, what can I am really hooked. I'm charmed by her personality. And when you're talking about the estimate of her wealth, that she was one of
Yeah.
the wealthiest women of her time. So
Yeah.
just tell a little bit about Janki Bai. That will be very interesting. And why she is Janki Bai? And
Janki Bai.
the story of Chappan Churi and others.
Chappan. Yeah.
It's very interesting actually. She survived 56 attacks, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
talk about a little bit more
Janki Bai
on
is
Janaki Bai.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm so happy that you were enchanted by Janaki Bai, because Janaki Bai is actually one of the lesser known courtesans of her times, because she was not beautiful to look at. It's so ironic.
Ah,
Imagine a courtesan.
okay. That's a
Yeah.
good point that I'm going to add with um, uh, Bala Saraswati again. Okay, please go on.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Imagine a courtesan who's not good looking. I mean, not just good looking, she was known as Chappan Churi because her face was stabbed by 56 wounds given to her by a jilted lover who she refused to be with. Again, strong woman. Yes, she's a courtesan. Yes, she can have patrons. Yes, she can have lovers, but by her choice. She's not bound to be, she's not bound ki, okay, I'm a courtesan, so anybody can love me or I have to be anybody. So actually, one of her lovers, when she said no, it's a myth again, that he found her alone in one of the roofs of a house and had did this attack. But she was actually a contemporary of Gohar Jan. And when the Darbar of 1911 happened, when the capital shifted to Delhi, she and Gohar Jan both sang in the capital, and they were both awarded with 1,000 guineas by the then emperor. I think it was George. Yeah, and imagine the grit of this lady, that she cannot show her face, so she always used to have a veil, and yet the sonorous voice that cut through all the pardas and all the veils that were there, that still she had this charm of her voice that everybody was drawn towards her. And because you talk about her wealth, there's another very curious pattern that I have found in many courtesans, that they peaked as a courtesan at some point, and then because they were so, I mean, these women, they were very empty inside at some point. So they did not have traditional families or husbands or things and lovers. So they were also duped and they were taken advantage of a lot of times. And so most of these courtesans, whether it is Gauhar Jan, whether it is this Janaki Bai, whether it is Roopmati, they died in very miserable circumstances. Almost poor. So it is, or Mylapur Gauri Ammal, or there are a couple of more courtesans. So it is very sad to see that this transition or this peak that comes, and then they go out of all the
Yeah, this
wealth that they
ascending and descending phase of
Correct, correct. So that's a little heartbreaking, but I mean, but then there are other courtesans also, like Amrapali. She found her wisdom in Buddhism, and Bala Saraswati was fine. Begum Akhtar also retired quite okay, you know. But yeah, I mean, it hurts my heart to see some of these courtesans who earned so much to die in penury. Anyway, so that was about Janki Bai.
and I think another name comes to my mind is Kesarbai.
Kesar
You
Bhai,
know, yeah,
exactly.
I was at least I was expecting um, Kesarbai in the least, but somehow,
In the
but you can have a
next one.
second book on, you can have a second one, next one actually. Okay,
Ji,
next coming to this the idea of beauty. Now, when we are
correct.
talking about Janki Bai,
Ji,
I always talk about when I talk about classical dance performances. I
correct.
keep two examples. One example is Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra playing Radha in
Yeah,
Puri Yadunanda.
yeah,
Uh, and when he was performing, I saw it Guruji performing quite in a old days, and Guruji was old, and his face is bald, and as usual Guruji. And when he start performing Puri Yadunandana, I have not seen the most beautiful Radha. I see the most beautiful Radha in Guruji.
yeah,
The body transform, and you see, you don't see the man, but you see the most beautiful woman.
correct,
And that's the magic actually. And other one is Bala Saraswati. It is
correct,
said that we have not seen Bala Saraswati performing live, but many of critics who had seen Bala Saraswati, they believe that she is the person. She's not the most beautiful dancer of
true,
her time, but
Sure.
She was the person who can transform you or transport you to a different place, which is
Correct.
not possible. So, what is that idea of beauty actually? It's not
So,
the body, which is the surpassing the idea of prettiness and reaching the beauty, the idea of beauty, uh, which is undefined actually. So how do you
correct.
see the idea of beauty in all these women actually? Many of them are very beautiful, and some of them are not really beautiful. So how do
Correct.
you see the contrast of the idea of beauty in all these six, all these 10 characters?
So, Kedarji, you know, and whoever is hearing us, they would know that abhinayas are of different types, right? There is Aharya Abhinaya, there's Mukha Abhinaya. Then, when Guruji or Janaki Bai or Bala Saraswati, they used to go on stage, I think what shifted their presence from just the physicality of their body was the sattvic bhava. Once an artist, and I firmly believe in this fact, once the artist starts touching upon the sattvic abhinaya, which is the purest form of uh, art that you can touch upon. Because if, again, we're talking about layers right now, so whether it is as an artist, do you want to attract the onlookers with your face? Do you want to attract the onlookers with your aharya? Do you want to attract onlookers with your vachika bhinaya? What is it that you will draw audience or divinity or do your sadhana with? Which is the focal point of your sadhana, of your practice? I think when we talk about whether it is Guru Khilachar Mohapatra or Pandit Birju Maharaj or Bala Saraswati or Begum Akhtar, so and so forth, these people, they transgress this boundary of mundane and they went into metaphysical. As soon as one touches Satvika Abhinaya, something which comes from within, from the Atman, and starts reaching the Paramatman, because they themselves were having glimpses of that divinity when they were performing, is what I feel. Because I have experienced that only once and one for 1 second in 20 years of my practice. So once the artist becomes that, uh, I think that is when they transgress their physicality and take themselves and the audience and the divinity towards the metaphysical space of existence. Then we do not exist on this mundane phase. And that's the aim of this art, of art forms, and especially Indian art forms.
Okay. Okay. Now coming to another plane actually. Uh,
Ji.
Many of suppose at least three or four of these characters like Jadanbai, Goharjan, Bala Saraswati, uh, they have confronted uh, with modernity.
Yeah.
Suppose Goharjan coming with uh, her records, Jadanbai also. So
Right.
how do they confront or how do they encounter uh, the presence of modernity? So coming from a very strong traditional
History.
background, when
Right.
you are meeting or when you are forced to have a dialogue with modern techniques, modern mediums, how did they react? How did they cope themselves with the idea of modernity? Particularly Goharjan, Begum Akhtar, and Jadanbai and Bala Saraswati. They have danced. Bala Saraswati coming from the family of Devdasis, and she also performed in the Europe, and she was one of the most appreciated dancers in the West. And
Yeah.
the same with Goharjan, Jadanbai, and Begum Akhtar. They were the most famous singers of their time, actually, and they are appreciated by the masses, and their records are sold in thousands. So, how you found their encounter with modernity, and how did they cope with the whole idea of modernity?
Correct. Well, so I would not like to generalize, but I think men, the gender men, are very scared of new things. I mean, they're very happy in their own space. We are all happy in our own space. And on the other end, when you talk about women, A, they're super adjusting. B, they are open to new ideas, and open to new experiences. So when the record and the discs came out, the invention came out, many of the stars of those times, the male vocalists or male performers of those times refused to record, because at that time there was this myth that if you sing into a microphone, it will capture your soul. That was the myth going around.
it will follow your voice.
हाँ वो आपका आवाज पकड़ लेगा, है ना?
पकड़ लेगा,
तो
yeah.
बड़े बड़े उस्ताद लोग गाते ही नहीं थे, ठीक है? So then these women thought, okay, this is whatever it is, and then they started experimenting, and I think that was a great moment for Gauhar Jan or Jadan Bai or all these women to take over a very empty market that was coming into being, So that happened. And second thing is, like I said, men are not very open to uprooting themselves from a place and then starting anew. They would rather build themselves in the same place. Now, whether it was Gauhar Jan, whether it was Jaddan Bai, whether it was Begum Akhtar, or whether it was Bala Saraswati, they all had this character of uprooting themselves from their traditional, whether it was Madras or Calcutta or Bombay, and shift to a new geographical location. Forget about the mentality, like the mental switch of shifting from one technology to the other. Like for example, Jaddan Bai, she had a very full going kotha in Kolkata, where she had tons of patrons, but she saw the advent of film technology, which was coming in Bombay at that time, and she uprooted her entire institution that she has established and went to Bombay and started her own production house. Can you believe how much of grit and determination will a person require, men, woman, kid, whatever, to uproot a full functioning business and try something new, and then on top of it make a name for themselves? So these are the characteristics actually, which made me actually write more about women entertainers than men entertainers, because men entertainers usually have a linear graph. So they would go like this and they would plateau and they would remain at that level. Women entertainers, like we were discussing, they have their peaks and downs and peaks and downs and things, and very interesting, very full of life. So that was the thing. Even Bala Saraswati, I mean, you must be knowing, Chennai, Madras was her hardcore. Yet she would go to US, she would stay there for years, she would establish a center in Europe, and you. I mean, it was amazing. They did not need to, because they were taken care of. They were courtesans, they had lovers, they had patrons, they had a lot of money. Why was this need of establishing their identity, their institution, their art? So I think it is wonderful that these women did what they did.
So if I understood you right, in a right way, you are talking about the women performers are to be more progressive than their male counterparts. Is it so?
Well, if you say so.
It is so, actually. It is so. I know the way they coped, or the way they uh, adopted the new technology, the idea of modernity, uh, the new dimension, the new possibilities. And you see, can can somebody imagine that Jadanbai created a tradition, a family tradition, where we are getting Nargis Dutt, and
Correct. Sanjay
then
Dutt.
coming up to Sanjay Dutt,
Yeah, and then his kids
and then the
now.
whole idea of the entire Bollywood fraternity. And you can say the Gauhar Jan, Jaddanbai, and Begum Akhtar, they are the troika, can be branded as the mother of Bollywood singing. Actually, they were
Correct. Yeah, very
not,
much.
that's another. Okay, now coming to a different question. Question is the debate between Bala Saraswati and Rukmini Devi Arundale. That's very, very interesting debate in the history of contemporary art in India.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah.
the idea of Sringara in Bala Saraswati and the idea of Sringara in Rukmini Devi Arundale. Rukmini Devi Arundale was highly educated. She came from a very strong background. And Bala Saraswati, as you know, she came from a traditional Devdasi family. He was a musician, he was a dancer. And they had a debate on Sringara.
जी.
So can you just can you elaborate the idea of Sringara in Bala Saraswati and the idea of Sringara in Rukmini Devi Aurangzebe?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that I am not competent enough to talk about this subject because I am not a Bharatanatyam dancer or a scholar or anybody
But I
who
think
can.
you have referred that debate in your
So I have again,
in your
I
book.
have touched, yes, I have touched very thinly that this debate existed, but I don't find myself this knowledgeable, this senior, or this insightful enough to talk about it. But having said so, for the information of the readers and the audience, what happened was Bharatanatyam was not Bharatanatyam; it was Sadirattam. It was one of
Yeah,
the court traditions. It was performed in salons. It was performed in the zamindar's house. It was performed in the king's court. So when Sadirattam used to be performed, or not just Sadirattam, also when when the precursor of Kuchipudi was performed, or when even Kathak was performed, the subject matter not necessarily used to be divine. The subject matter could be the king themselves. So Kuchipudi has a lot of Nayar songs which are addressing the king, the Nayars. Similarly, in Sadirattam, they address their lover, who was usually the patron. Similarly, in Kathak, so there is a lot of salam. There is a lot of mundane physical love which is addressed, which makes up the Shringara of those times, which was from the traditional communities and families. And as far as I know, again, I'm not an expert, but when Bharatanatyam was being instituted and culturalized during the independence movement, where all the gurus, whether it was Guru Kelacharan Mohapatra, whether it was Rukmini Arundale, everybody was establishing their identity of the region, of what India is, of what classical is. Then I think Rukmini ji, like Guruji, reconstructed Odissi and so on and so forth, reconstructed the lost art forms. Rukmini Arundale ji would have thought that some subject matters are too lewd or too explicit for public consumption. And also, there was this entire, again, since we talk about courtesans and kothas and tawayas and ganewalis, they come with a connotation of negative. Whenever we hear Tawaya, nobody will say or think in their head automatically they were the highest performers. They will always think that they were loose women of loose character who were performing for whosoever. That's a misconception, and that's an entire point which we'll discuss. But that was also the general perception of general people during those times. Because any woman stepping out of their house to perform in front of strange men, strangers, was seen as a loose woman. Whether she might have slept with them or not, whether she would have only one lover the entire lifetime, doesn't matter. Because Bala Saraswati, she might be a courtesan, she would have never married, but she only had one lover, like one patron for the entire life. R.K. Shanmugam, who was the first finance minister in Jawaharlal Nehru's cabinet. So it is not that women who were performing, they were usually of loose character, but that was the perception. So when Bharatanatyam or even when Odissi was instituted, all these notions or all these contexts of talking about kisses or talking about hugs or talking about male counterparts, they wanted to slash this off so that music or dance, and this did not only happen in music. When Bhatkhande or when Vishnu Digambar Paluskar was also establishing their musical institutions, they made sure that the music that was being written, बड़ा ख्याल छोटा ख्याल जो भी लिखा जा रहा है, वो उसको हम एक उनका सबका उस वक्त का 1940s का 50s का मेंटालिटी था, इसको हम शुद्ध करेंगे। शुद्धता का एक बहुत बड़ा उस टाइम पे चलन चल
that
रहा था।
that I say, that the uh, imposition of Victorian morality
Exactly,
on
exactly.
on the purity, on the indigenous purity of India actually.
Correct, correct. So
And
all these concepts, yeah, no, please,
no, no,
आपको
please.
ज्यादा पता है। नहीं नहीं, मैं बस ये कह
Please.
रहा हूँ कि ये प्योरिटी, ये मोरालिटी, ये सब बहुत इंटरचेंजेबल है। आजकल लिव इन इज वेरी एक्सेप्टेबल, इट इज नॉट सीन एज hush hush affair, and at few years ago live in would have seen as an hush hush affair. A few hundred years ago having a lover would have been okay. So these moralities change over time, I really believe that. So And so I think that was the entire debate discussion which happened between Rukmini ji and Bala Saraswati. But again, I find value addition in both, because there are consumers of both sort of arts. Somebody wants to experience the divine through a certain form of art, through Bharatanatyam, which is very straight, they can do so. If somebody wants to experience divine through through the mundane, actually, because in Odisha also, we see Jagannath ji as our lover. We don't see him as some great, so there's a lot of Sakhi and Sakha
Yeah,
bhav with us.
the whole Bhagavad, is all about that.
Exactly.
That he's the lover and everyone is the her. He's beloved actually.
His
In
beloved.
Bhagavad it is said that Jivara esana mukati sate jivati ekapati. So
Satyakatha.
he's the only husband and the rest are his
He's the only
wife.
husband. Exactly. Exactly. So all this moral concept of, I mean, I don't understand where do they come from, because India was quite liberal and is quite liberal. So yeah.
Okay, now coming to the last question. I mean, after asking this question, I will ask the audience to join, or you can ask me one or two questions because you are curious to ask me one or two questions. So, my last question to you would be, you know, uh, all in the history of the world, you can see these quotations. They have the idea of liberty. They live the life of liberty. And I remember one very famous Italian poet called Veronica Franco. Veronica Franco was a quotation, and she she was a very famous quotation and also poet of her time. And she rejected the idea of marriage and adopted to be a quotation to retain her liberty. So, in all these, in the history of women's struggle, do we take the idea of liberty in a positive note, or still they have to fight? Like, suppose we always say that the Maharis or Devdasis are great, they are Mahan Nari, that's why they are Mahari, but they are rejected by the society of their time. I remember in one of article, a very senior Pandit wrote that no, it was Raya Ramananda who polluted the whole Odia culture of Mahari by bringing them to perform for common people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this whole idea of rejection, how do they survive the idea of liberty in the face of terrible rejection, suppression, and exploitation? How you
Correct.
see uh,
Correct.
how you see their liberty as
So I think.
as their biggest identity?
Yeah, yeah. So I think, like I've mentioned in the book also, sir, that artists, no matter what phase or era of time or history we live in, or even contemporary times, artists will always exist on the periphery of the main society that is there. Artists, because we are so extraordinary in our being, extraordinary not in the way we are some great people, but we are so differently wired in our head because we understand the sar of living. We understand that khana pina rehna marna is not the only thing that one has to accomplish in a lifetime. So anybody who is a different color than the majoritarian society that exists will be bullied upon, will be ostracized, will be expelled. you know so that's anywhere being there. I mean, look at even in our contemporary society. If it is the LGBTQ community, they have to fight for their rights. If it is the women community, they have to fight for their rights. Anybody who's not, or if it is a right wing, or sorry, if it is whoever, right wing, left wing, whoever is in minority will have to fight. Artists are in minority. That's one thing. Now, I want to talk about the contemporary times, not just these courtesans. I speak from my personal experience as an artist that I'm existing right now. Me, my contemporaries, my seniors, my juniors had to have a lot of struggle of acceptance. Art still is not accepted as a respectable profession to have. Even today, when I say I am a dancer, they say, okay, fine, but what do you actually do? Which is something I can't get my head around. Why can't one be just an artist? So this mentality or this understanding of arts in itself is not sufficient, or is something which needs to be looked down upon, still exists in our times also. And today also, like courtesans of their times, we have to fight to establish our identity. So I'm thankful to platforms like KLF, to other platforms, to my publishers. When I'm invited on stage, by inviting artists like me, what they are doing is they are breaking the glass ceilings of a men can't perform, that आदमी डांस नहीं कर सकता. दूसरा, कि जो डांसर्स या आर्टिस्ट होते हैं, उनको वो ज्यादा पढ़े
Man
लिखे
can
नहीं.
man can dance, but he can dance contemporary.
हाँ, एग्जैक्टली, क्लासिकल नहीं कर सकते. हाँ, बिल्कुल,
Classical
एग्जैक्टली.
नहीं
हाँ,
कर सकता because classical
वो
is
तो लड़कियों का
feminine,
काम है.
so-called feminine.
करेक्ट. हाँ, वो तो लड़कियों का काम है. सेकंड, आर्टिस्ट आर कंसिडर्ड ऑफ अ लो कैटेगरी इन टर्म्स ऑफ intellectualism. They think artists are stupid people. They can't read, write. They don't have the brains to. Please, I want to ask anybody who has seen great masters, art, as you would I agree, to write or to create out of nothing. Because like you are a writer, I am a dancer. We create out of nothingness. वैक्यूम से कुछ लेके आते हैं यहाँ पे, फिर प्रेजेंट करते हैं, लोग उसका रसस्वादन करते हैं. द मोस्ट वैलिड पॉइंट ऑफ आर्टिस्ट टू एग्जिस्ट वॉज इन कोविड टाइम्स. अगर आपकी लिखी हुई किताबें नहीं होती, लोगों की बनाई हुई फिल्में नहीं होती, गाया हुआ गाना नहीं होता, नाचा हुआ डांस नहीं होता, I am sure people who survived would have also gone away. It was only because arts exist, and one needs to really start valuing artists, that a society can also exist. Otherwise, society, it's just we are all animals if we are if we don't have arts between us. So I think that's a running issue, and any era of history, even in contemporary times, artists have to fight for their existence. Again, I'm thankful to you, KLF, my publishers, that they're making a point that artists are of some value addition to the economy and the society. So yeah.
Okay, so my barrel is empty now, so it is up to you. So if you want to know one or two questions from me, then I can
Yes.
answer, or else we can go for.
Like, yeah, I have a very, very important question, because I mean, I did my own research, but you are an Odia yourself, and you are even deeper into the culture that I have studied and I have danced for. So, in Mahari culture, I want to understand, like you were mentioning that they were dance. I mean, some of them used to dance for the public, and then some of them used to dance for the gods. But there was also this entire concept of them being patronized by kings and the priests, the pandas of their times, and they used to have relationships with these men. So I want to understand, when we call a Mahari or a Devadasi Nitya Sumangali, married to the god, and this is, again, I'm not asking you for facts, but I'm asking you for your thoughts. How do you feel about it? That somebody is married to the god, is Nitya Sumangali, yet has a relationship with the king or the priest or whosoever in the community. Then how do you see the idea of purity? What is the idea of purity to you in this context?
You should say, number one, the idea of performing for God only was diluted when Raya Ramananda brought them for stage performance. And in Mahari Seva, there are two sections actually. One is Bhitar Gauni, they perform only for God, and the uh, the Mahar Nijog actually.
Mahar,
They
Gaudi, Gaudi.
Sampradani Jog. They're said Sampradani Jog. That means they pop up in the Patuaras, in the
Yeah,
festivals,
yeah.
during Chandana,
Jula Yatra.
during Rath Yatra. There are many rituals where Devdasi is a part of the ritual. So
Correct.
there is a performing part, in for general public, upwards related to the rituals of the temple. But
Yeah.
the relationship part, that's very complicated. It is, always there is a shrewd and diplomatic attribution that the king is the uh, part of the god. He is the living god.
Okay. That's true.
You know,
That's true. Uh,
the king is he's the incarnation of the god. He's the Chalanti
correct.
Vishnu.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
So that is, that's why when Margling wrote Wives of God King, that
Yeah.
becomes very controversial because she spoke about these relationships, and she was very clear and explicitly she spoke out about this relationship. So
Yeah.
that is one point, and other point is, many Maharis are banished from their seva just because they are married to uh, someone else. So once you are
Uh,
married to, or if you are, it is said that there was a moral police called
mhm.
Dosandhi Paricha. They were looking after the moral purity of the
Yeah.
Mahari. So
Mm.
that was a very, you can say, very regressive and terrible exploitative system
Yeah.
of that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So no, it was a forced morality, not that it was. Now we say that okay, they are dedicated to the service of God, but at the
They must.
same time, the kings and the Brahminic system ensured they
Yeah.
uh, they must remain pure, and their
Correct.
moral judgment is basically Brahminic and at the same time a part of male hegemony.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that's
It's it's just so
that's
interesting
very
that,
clear.
yeah. No, thank you so much. Actually, I did not have this angle that yes, kings are also living gods. Yes, that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah, that's why it's justified that
That is how
if
it's
you are the
justified.
one, yeah. So that is every time it is said that he will when the Mahari is first uh, uh, after the Sadhi Bandha, she will
Yeah.
go and meet the king,
The
and
king.
there is a exchange of glances. There is also a
Mm.
part of rituals actually. The king
That's
and the
right.
Mahari, they will exchange their glances.
Okay.
So that is one. That is
So
very.
interesting.
It's very interesting, very dramatic. Sometimes very. It can trouble your
Yeah.
modern
Sensibilities.
mind and
Correct.
sensibility.
Correct.
So
Correct.
there are many layers to that, uh, and that's it. Some other.
Yeah.
Sometime I'm trying to write a book on Maharis and Odissi
Great.
tradition. So let's see
We'll love to read.
if it can
We'll love
ever
to
be
read.
possible. But
That's the
but
thing. So
it's great to,
these topics.
yeah,
No,
please.
no. I'm just saying these topics are so rich and so full that one can keep talking, one can keep writing, and I think my book Courting Hindustan, like you were saying, and thank you for that. It's very accessible in its vocabulary, so it's not very dense. It's not a research paper that I've written.
No, no,
You
it's
know,
very
Any-
the idea of storytelling is very important in your book. Let me
correct
talk about that actually. You are talking about a character and their life as a story. You are
as a
not
story.
making it a research paper actually.
This,
So uh,
it was not a caricature.
the,
I mean, it was not a
yeah.
sketch. Yeah, it was an
So that's
entire
very,
story in I lived. So I think I'm hoping that with our conversation and with the book that there is now quoting Hindustan, people will get a glimpse into these interesting lives and these interesting people and would read more about them and know more about what artists are. So I'm very thankful to you to have had me and with such kind questions and such kind inputs and what a beautiful conversation we've had. Thank you so much.
thank you very much, Madhur. I'm really very happy to talk to you. It's a pleasure, and I hope if there are any questions from the studio side, we can take it up, or
Sure.
else we can conclude. But it
We
was
can
wonderful talking to you, and looking forward to see you somewhere in
in
Odisha,
Bhubaneswar. Yes,
yeah,
yes,
in
done.
Bhubaneswar, and love to see you performing and also
Please.
talking about your book.
Yeah.
See you soon. Actually, my that is the last word that I want to tell you. See you soon.
Thank you, sir.
Namaskar,
Okay.
and thank you very much, KLF team, Asutosh, Rasmi, Soumya, everyone.
Thank you.
KLF is a part of my family. So thank you very much for creating this opportunity and bringing Madhur, who is indeed a wonderful scholar and dancer, to this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. See you.
Thank you.